And if ever you should leave me, I'm never really gone. You can find me deep within you, in the one.
If you have a spiritual practice, when those insights occur, they integrate into your way of living. They don't wipe you out, nor do they just fade into the recesses of memory as to a wonderful moment you once had. Integrates into you. And that sense of oneness and unity becomes more real than anything.
Do you have a destiny? Moses believed that his destiny was to lead the Israelites out of Egypt into the Promised Land, while on the other hand, Forrest Gump felt that life is like a box of chocolates and you never know what you're going to get. It can be a little scary trying to tackle an idea so big, but it might be worth another look, since the final key to experiencing yourself as an embodiment of God is to uncover your deepest yearning and your reason for living.
The calling is always upon us. There's always something within us that wants to become conscious of itself as us. It's called the next stage of our evolution. There's something within all of us that we must express.
So Moses represents you and me, an ordinary person on an ordinary day having an extraordinary experience, where Moses climbs a mountain and there he has an encounter with a presence that shows up as this flame in a bush that is burning, but the bush won't be consumed. Meaning that the source of this presence isn't in the material realm. The source of this presence comes from and is presencing that which is divine and eternal. And Moses doesn't know quite what to do with this, as either you or I would do. He knows there's something in him that knows this is about to completely transform his life.
Now, I consider myself a fairly spiritual person. But if I was sitting here today and the bush were to start burning, in my mind, I'd go get the fire extinguisher.
The bush is always glowing. I had an opportunity to be with a powerful shaman in Africa a few years ago, and we were traveling at night, and I was kind of stumbling, and they were just walking through the jungle like it was daylight. And we went out to a clearing and had this very powerful experience out there, and after the experience, everything was lit up. Everything was aglow with this fire. The leaves were on fire, the ground was on fire, everything was aglow. And I was aware that these individuals that were taking me through the jungle, they were seeing like this. They had this night vision that allowed them to see the luminosity from all of nature. And in that instant, I had the same thing. I had that kind of a spiritual night vision that allowed me to see that everything was ablaze with the Spirit of God. And I thought about Moses seeing the burning bush. At that moment, he was in transcendent awareness, that he could see clearly that God is everywhere and everything is aglow with this fire, this power, and this presence. Moses was having a good day.
When Moses asks the bush, asks this flame, asks this presence, "Who are you?" he hears, "I am that I am." And we don't know whether the conversation is actually audible in human terms or it's a transmission from the knower that is everywhere present into his heart. But nevertheless, this communication says something. And the communication is this: there is a journey that you are to take. Joseph Campbell would later call that the hero's journey. That there's a journey that is for each one of us to take, that takes us from our local, temporal, egoistic point of view or self to an understanding, a person of destiny, a person of wholeness and completeness, and that journey is the Moses journey.
Moses didn't think he was worthy, and so that unworthiness combined with willingness provided a space for the presence of God to come through, because Moses wasn't blocking God out with his ego.
So the rest of the story is both a literal story, a historic story, but it's also a meta story. It's a story of you and the story of me. And all the characters in that story are parts of ourselves. So Moses is then told that he must go and free the slaves, and he is to take them to the promised land, or to fulfillment, to the land of milk and honey. And he questions, I can't do this. I mean, he stutters, he can't speak well. He's like, who am I to do this? And you and I feel the same way. When a dream, an idea, a calling, something calls to us about make a difference, give something, do something in your local community, do something for the world, do something for your family, do something. And right away we feel like, oh, I'm not up to it. I don't have what is required. I'm not enough for that.
I think everyone has to come to grips with the fact that if there's a destiny within all of us, there's something calling all of us, and we are presently not the person that can deliver that destiny. We grow into it as we say yes to it. There's an old statement that God does not call the qualified, God qualifies the called. So that when we answer that call, then the presence qualifies you. It qualified me. I didn't have all of the skills, I didn't have the resources, I didn't have the money, I didn't have the space, didn't have anything. But God qualified me through my yes. So people showed up, resources showed up, buildings showed up, individuals who could catch the vision that I was articulating showed up, and then I changed, I grew. So the person that said yes is not the same person sitting here today. The person that's sitting here today saying yes to the next stage of the vision will not be the person that inherits and articulates and manifests that aspect of the vision. We're constantly evolving and growing and unfolding based on our ability and our willingness and our capacity to say, yes, I'm willing, yes.
And so Moses agrees to the journey. And there's that part of us that says yes to our own destiny, that says yes to our purpose as we discover it. And then, of course, comes having to encounter Pharaoh. Not only the historic Pharaoh, but the personal Pharaoh. The personal Pharaoh is our intellect. It's the part of us that's all made an agreement with the kingdom of our lives as we've known it, with everything just as it is, the status quo, the comfort zone. And then there's this part of us that wants to emerge, this part of us that wants to make a difference. And there's a whole argument that goes on internally about, no, I'm not about to make that change. And ultimately, in this story, which is your story and my story, the hero's journey, the trouble builds up, the trouble gets tougher, things get more and more complicated, and finally, in desperation, Pharaoh says, okay, go ahead, take the people and go.
Now, the thing that I find very interesting about Moses is that he had a speech impediment. We don't know what kind it was, but one might think, why would God choose someone with a speech impediment, let's say a stutter, to deliver 4,000, however many, unruly Israelites into a new way of being? So here they are fussing and arguing among themselves, and Moses with his speech impediment, you would say, why does God have such a sense of humor? And you say, why would he choose Moses?
One of the reasons why God could use him is because of his humility. And oftentimes, people that seem that they're lacking something within themselves, they become great vessels and great vehicles for the power of God to express through, because there's nothing to inhibit the flow from expressing through them.
Very often we think we have impediments or limitations, and we don't think God can use us, but God will take your limitation and use you and it to deliver somebody else into a new place and a new way of being.
So the sea opens, and then the real journey begins, because they spend 40 years in the desert. Which is in the Bible and in many of the mystical traditions. 40 is symbolic of simply this, the amount of time required for transformation. Noah has 40 days in the flood. Jesus has 40 days on the Mount of Temptation. Moses has 40 years in the desert. It's the amount of time required for the transformation. And for some of us, this is our 40th moment right now. Watching this right now, we know that this is the moment when the life we've lived is not sufficient to the purpose that we're being called for.
I think it's useful for us to understand why the soul came to the body. Now, the soul came into physicality in order that it might experience itself, express itself in the physical world as who it really is, thus to know itself in its own experience.
So the fear is that if we identify the I am that I am with the I am that I am, that somehow it makes us pretending to be something we're not being, or taking on something. But what if it's just the opposite? What if by saying that I am an opportunity for the I am that I am to presence divine love through my hands this day to a child that I'm teaching, or to an old person I'm helping carry the groceries, or to someone that I call who's in pain or hurting in some way, and I'm the voice that comforts them? What if when we give ourselves just the possibility that if we allow ourselves, the I am that I am might be an avenue through which the I am, that is God, that is the presence, that is the power of life itself, might find a way, an entry point to make a difference for good right here on planet Earth.
But we got to be careful here, because when the ego starts to think that it's God, it just gets arrogant, it gets greedy, it takes us over completely. It's not a pretty picture. We have to dip into our soul, to our essence, in order to be all that there is.
The difficulty is this. We're a mixture of a constellation of different identities that have emerged for different reasons. We're mothers, we're fathers, we're brothers, we're sisters, we're employers, we're employees. There's all kinds of identities, and every single identity is pulling upon our energy for its survival. However, there is a central identity, which is the I am presence. There's a central identity which is not in comparison with all other identities or in comparison with anybody else. It's the image and likeness of God. It's a unique configuration of infinite potential, infinite possibility. And within that core identity, it is speaking, it's calling our real name and inviting us to greatness. It's inviting us to be more ourselves.
Remember, it's the still small voice. We have to get quiet enough to hear it.
And through spiritual practice of prayer, lowly listening, meditation, after a while you're able to tell the difference between the voice of one of the constellation of shifting identities or the true voice that's coming from your soul that wants you to be great. And the definition of greatness is your capacity and your willingness to serve.
When we get past survival, when we get past those small-minded things, then the only thing the soul wants to do is to make a difference, to give to humanity.
What can I do? There's so much you can do, you can't even believe it. Right at the end of your fingertips is a whole world of your possible creation. And it is ignited, it is inspired, it is embraced, and it is in fact experienced in extraordinary ways the moment you decide to be in service, not just to the world, but to the world of your own creation.
When that central voice begins to speak, and it's still and it's small, it's calling you to a greater degree of service, and a greater degree of serving humankind, a greater degree of serving your family, a greater degree of serving everyone you come in contact with. That's one of the ways you can tell the difference between that voice. Is it calling you to serve, or is it calling you just to take care of yourself? If it's calling you just to take care of yourself, it may be coming from the ego.
The question often rises for us, so how do I know the difference between God's will and my will, and do I have a will? What do I do with my will? And my understanding of that is that, where is God? Jesus said the kingdom of God is within you. So within us, we know we have the Pharaoh part, or the intellect, or the part of us that argues for circumstances that we know. And then there's the prophetic part, or there's the part of us that does have a destiny, that does have a call to make a difference for good. And so when we align the Pharaoh with the heart, then we align our will with God's will.
When we enact creation, we are emulating the Creator. And the result of that is that we feel good. We feel love, we feel expanded.
Your soul needs inner peace, it needs contentment, love, creative expression, and of course divine connection. Those are the qualities that make you feel good.
You're actually wired so that you'll know you're on track by the aliveness you feel. I am that I am.
And it's in your being, your embracing of the presence and standing in that you give the greatest gift that you can to the world.
And so the understanding about that and the living from that is the journey. Course in Miracles calls it the 18-inch journey from the head to the heart.
In that moment, standing there, overlooking ground zero and all the chaos that was going on, arose my life destiny. All my selfish pursuit of trying to get what I needed to get and be where I needed to be in my life just seemed ridiculous. I knew that from that point on, my life would be about all of us. It would be about community. My heart was so filled with possibility of what we're capable of when we're working from that point. Because I know it's possible, my whole life now has been about recreating that community. It is the catalyst for my wanting to create Elevate Film Festival, which is, when you really break it down, it's just a community of people who understand this oneness that I'm talking about. Can we bring people into an experience that's so much bigger than who we think we are, that we can experience that level of oneness? Because when you do, there's nothing more beautiful in this lifetime, in this experience. There's nothing greater than that.
The kingdom of God is unconditional love. The kingdom of God is peace of mind. The kingdom of God is joy in my soul. I said, yeah, let me seek that stuff. And then I don't have to worry about getting anything, being with anybody, doing anything special. Let me go for the unconditional love, first of myself, and then to be able to extend it to everyone else. Let me go for the peace of mind, where I'm not worrying about what might happen, what could happen, where I'm just embracing the presence, my I amness, the manna of God in this right now moment. Let me go for that. And let that trickle down and fill every other aspect of my life.
That's the kingdom. To that degree that we begin to know who we are, that who I am behind my eyes is the same person that you are behind your eyes. And that's the kingdom, and that's the connection that connects all of us. And as we get closer to that, then we begin to manifest the attributes of that in our life and our daily living.
So once I really understood what the kingdom was, oh yeah, baby, I want to seek that.
So paradoxically, in that moment, while the world was experiencing chaos and confusion and fear, I was standing there experiencing my first true experience with God. Through giving and the service that I was witness to, I had experienced the oneness, the greatest sense of oneness that I ever knew was possible. And from that arose my destiny.
Now that we understand the three keys for experiencing ourselves as an embodiment of God, now it's time for us to consider what we can create from that new experience. If saying and being, I am that I am, really can unlock the power of God within us, the next question is, well, how extensive is that power? Can we move mountains and create miracles like Jesus and Moses? Are these just fantastical ideas, or can they really change the world?
I is the creative factor of the universe, and when you add am to it, what you get is the movement of the creative force of the universe. So every time you say I am, you are creating movement. Think of it this way. We say, I am broke. Yes, and that's how you stay. I am lonely. Yes, and that's how you stay. But if we were to begin to use the creative force and energy of that name, I, and the movement of am, to say, I am whole, I am holy, I am complete, I am beautiful, I am gorgeous, I am wealthy, I am, we begin energy moving in our life, and we re-educate our souls. That's all Moses had to do, was to bring that oneness, that creative energy of God, and put an action to it. And Pharaoh had no choice but to back down. He recognized what he was dealing with.
He was able to take the I am presence and lift up an entire nation to see who and what they really were and whose they really were.
There's actually a way to activate this creative energy through a process that we can practice every day. And the great thing about this process is that it applies to almost every area of our life. And you can remember it with 5 simple words. And guess what the words are? The only thing that changes is what you focus on when you say those words. The first step is to imagine what you want to be, do, or have, and really make sure that it's something that matters. And the second step is to repeat the words, I am that, I am, and allow yourself to expand into that new possibility.
So if we want to have a new way of being, we must say it and repeat it time and time and time again. When we repeat things, we encode them in our consciousness.
The third step is pretty easy. In fact, you're already doing it. It's to breathe. Controlled breathing centers you, energizes you, and actually amplifies the effect. One way to practice this is to say, I am that, on the out-breath, and then as you breathe in, either think or say the words, I am, like this. I am that. I am. I am that. I am. This simple process takes whatever you're feeling and imagining and projects it out into the world so that you can experience it in your real life.
One of the ways I like to support people in doing this is by thinking about the qualities that inspire you, the qualities that you desire. See somebody, maybe you know them or maybe you've read about them, in your awareness. Bring that image of them very close to you, and then just close your eyes and start repeating, I am that I am. Really allowing yourself to encode that image, that way of being, and those qualities right into yourself.
I am the joy I want to experience. I am the peace I want to experience. I am the beauty I want to realize. I am the abundance I want to realize. And through the power of that declaration, through the flow of that kind of energy, it manifests in and as your life.
When we talk about manifestation or getting stuff, no, we want 2 cars, 3 houses. You got 1 butt. Why do you need 4 cars? You know what I mean? I could say the same thing about shoes. I've got 2 feet, I've got 80 pairs of shoes, but it's manna to my soul. But manifestation of things is not the same thing as manna, the presence of God that supplies your every need.
There's some people that are dominated by the ego, and they try to get. They try to use the principles for acquisitiveness, to get things, and they hoard. And inside, they're very poor people. They may have a lot of stuff, but they're just poor people with a lot of stuff.
Advanced students understand that it works exactly the opposite, not to try to magnetize something to us, but to try to bring something through us.
Many people say, I just don't know who I am. They don't know their soul. They don't know their soul. And it's great. People think they can reach out, get the cars, the jobs, the best relationships, the money. People get that, and more power to them, but they still say to themselves, I still feel empty. What's missing? You forgot about the soul.
And that's really what we want. We want the grace and the majesty and the presence of God to so fill us until it's unspeakable. Because if we can speak it and call it something, we'll try to fix it and change it. So we just want to be. And in that beingness, we have the manna, which is the manifestation of the presence of God. And it's not about a car or a house. It's about the presence of God.
Truly embodying the God presence isn't just about being saintly and having this upward connection to the divine that we would call mystical and enlightened, but it also requires that we fully inhabit our bodies and fully be in our sensuality, our sexuality, and really combine and fuse those energies.
Love is God, God is love. So you are God, you are love. And when you use that energy of love, God will always say yes. It will manifest exactly what you want.
So if you can access that feeling of oneness or the energy of wholeness, what Jesus calls the kingdom of heaven within you, then you can begin to experience that all around you in the world.
But if we have an idea that something other than the kingdom of God is something we would seek after, then we will create, because we are so powerful, we will create in our own illusion that which is not of the heaven of which we dream. That is, we'll create our own hell on earth.
Moses and the Code never made it to the Holy Land, and since then Israel has been in constant conflict. Millions have lost their lives due to a misinterpretation of the name of God, and religious factions have been fighting for centuries, ironically, in the name of God. But thousands of people of all races and religions are flying in from all corners of the world, armed with the powerful intent to finally bring peace to the Holy Land by literally embracing the old city of Jerusalem.
at the time of the hug and before, it is important for us to keep our pure intention and relax.
So we're walking to the wall now, where we're going to join thousands of other people encircling the entire old city of Jerusalem.
Can you stretch the line?
We're here facing the wall, so as you breathe out, you say, I am that, meaning I am that peace in Jerusalem. Feel the peace radiating from this city.
ירושלים שחגגנו ככה בגשם בשבוע שעבר לא מסתיימים. הנה הפעם מחבקים את ירושלים.
And so, 3,500 years later, Moses' journey is complete by delivering the true meaning of the name of God to the Holy Land. It began with a conversation, but continues today through each one of us. The door has been unlocked. Now it's up to us to step into a new world.
Te condona.